Look at that. 11.5 million was spent on psychotherapy. And then down further on, they're saying they don't even need psychotherapy. Just give them the hormones. They're cheap. It's like the gas chamber, over in Germany. First, they started offing people in the back of trucks, and that was getting too messy, and they couldn't figure out how to get rid of them. Well, they thought, Zyklon B, made by the Bayer Corporation, would just be so much simpler. And all the people would just think they're going to go take a shower, and then it would all be all over for them. Well, I feel that way about the hormones. Good morning. Happy April Fool's Day, 2024. Today, I'm going to just get into this real quick. Something else I read on the WPATH files, and it's on page 119. And it's a post that's labeled U.S. Department of Defense Spending on Trans Healthcare. Oh, and I can't do this. The U.S. Department of Defense recently released numbers detailing the finances spent on transgender active duty between 2016 and 2021. The DoD reportedly spent $15 million between January 2016 and mid-May 2021 on transition-related medical care for 1,892 transgender service members, according to FOIA records analyzed by themilitary.com and their address there. Oh, maybe we'll go there. I would have to type that all in, so... An immediate reaction I had was that institutions such as the Coast Guard were excluded from this report because this is technically part of the Department of Homeland Security, even though Coast Guard utilizes Navy resources for trans care. Some major statistics mentioned are... I can't read the first one. Service members who received gender-affirming care during this period, including 726 Army soldiers, 576 Navy soldiers, 449 Air Force airmen, and 141 Marines. 11.5 million was spent on psychotherapy. It takes a lot of money to brainwash people. 3.1 million on 243 gender-affirming surgeries, 340,000 on hormone therapy for 637 service members, and the rest on other care. Why is it so much more for the psychotherapy? Because the psychologist and the psychiatrists are the one that's leading this brainwashing scheme going on here in the Western world. All they have to do is brainwash all the military people in a new direction. The colonist, the evil colonist. I read a comment on another video the other day, and somebody had mentioned in there that maybe some of these young people are changing their gender because they're so ashamed of being colonists. Well, you're on the other side of the war. Because if you sterilize yourself and you have no children, then in a few generations, you're not going to have any say in any of this at all. None of your genes. While access to psychotherapy is crucial for transgender service members, some trans folks have criticized current DoD rules for imposing requirements for certain psychotherapy sessions without regard to clinical need as a part of the administrative gender change process. This amounts to about 0.045% or less than 1/20% of the DoD's 216 annual medical budget for healthcare programs of $33.5 billion, which DoD is asking to be increased to $35.6 billion. I say, if somebody wants to have sex change, I don't know. Whoops. So somebody else commented, that means approximately 8,000 per service member. Does that sound right to you? And then their figures are seriously flawed, all skewed towards more expense rather than less. I know this as I had access to all the financials and the methodologies as part of my analysis for the 4 court cases against Trump administration. Far too much to cover here, but these are inaccurate and inflated cost figures. Somebody else says, that's very interesting. I wonder why they would do that. I thought the amounts were fairly low considering how much phalloplasty cost and how many individuals started and completed that surgery. And somebody else replied, 1,900 service members, only 600 plus were on HRT. What are the others doing? 243 surgeries at 14,000 per? Fox News will have a heyday with these numbers. Did they list the length of service commitments required? MOS, officer versus enlisted. Service members cannot complain about the required psychological evaluation. They're there to go to war, not transition. They have to be evaluated for fitness to continue, as many of us have significant psychic histories. Maybe you shouldn't be in the military. Maybe they should take that money that they're spending on transgendered, pay the military guys a little extra, maybe some bonuses, and let the transgender people, do it on their own. I feel like they are. These are people that are going to war. I don't need men worrying about their fingernails or women worrying about their dingle-dangle. This is also bizarre. Okay. First of all, thank you for all that you do for the trans military community. It's a community that is close to my heart. I agree with you. Being in North Carolina, or I think that's North Carolina, I have worked with more trans military personnel since 2008 than I can count. Before Obama, I had commands send me their soldiers, sailors, air wingers, and Marines because I knew that those folks needed help, all on the down low or looked the other way. Obama came into office and made it possible for military personnel and their families to receive trans care. Oh, of course, you got to include the families because this is all about taking down the families. Have a sterilization party. Mom, dad, the kids, you can get a special deal. Okay. Unfortunately, they were ill-equipped, untrained, backlogged, and oftentimes just bigots. Yeah, you're trying to sex change the population of children. You're worse than a bigot. I'll take the title bigot. Yeah, I'm a bigot. I don't think it's right what they're doing to children. I started seeing a surge in commands finding me and sending me their military personnel. Some of my enlisted folks, commanding officers, paid out of their own pockets to see me. Oh, some of the enlisted folks, commanding officers, are paying out of their own pocket. So there's even more than that. Warmed my heart. They just knew their trans military folks were some of the hardest working people they had, and if they just got off, They just knew their trans military folks were some of the hardest working people they had, and if they just got this off their plate, they'd be even better. Cost-benefit analysis, I suppose. Well, if these people aren't having children, I guess in a way, the military is going to save a lot of money. You don't have to pay for insurance for kids. The extra amount they get for having kids. That, not a problem. Okay. Now this is active duty. On the VA side, I received so many referrals from Salisbury, Virginia. Oh, maybe that is Virginia, not VA. On the Virginia side. I received so many referrals from Salisbury, Virginia. Yeah, I think that's what that means. Okay. Oh, I'm going to make this bigger. Again, they were backlogged and there was no one trained to help these trans vets. This went on for a few years until I got a phone call from one of their psychologists saying she needed help, but that was told that the VA system would no longer be transferring trans veterans to me. She asked if I would speak to her supervisor. I can't remember if he was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, regarding providing them some training. I did, and he made it very clear that my service for trans vets were no longer needed, nor was the training I offered. He went on to say he established a transgender task force. Sorry, I thought it was a bit much strange and so military. This person was unfamiliar with WPATH and its protocols, the SOC, and I don't have any idea what the SOCs are yet. Oops. After a few months, the trans vets started to return, stating that their hormones were discontinued because they were still trying to coordinate or figure out how to prescribe, and in the interim, put into a trans group. And the intern were put into a trans group. I don't know. If they weren't paying out of pocket, I was still billing the VA, but for PTSD, and a doc in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, worked to help me keep them on their hormones. So they just diagnosed them with PTSD and gave them hormones? That's weird. Kind of like all the people that are in pain and they're giving them gabapentin. Or the autism people. I seen a lady, she was on Wellbutrin, and then I just read a post today on the Wellbutrin board on Facebook that Wellbutrin, they had been on Wellbutrin for ADHD, and then it gave them seizures, and they ended up in the hospital. Okay, if they weren't paying out of pocket, I was still billing the VA, but for I just read that part. That's a really important part. They shouldn't, I don't know. Anyways, that's what they do. Just like now, you can self-diagnose with autism, and it's going to hurt the handicapped people in the long run. They've got the handicapped people convinced that this is a good way to go. All this transgendered rights stuff. You're going to be the first ones thrown under the bus. That's just the way I feel. I live in the real world. I think I like my camera better like that. Oh, well. All this to say, their numbers are absolutely wrong. If officers, trans-military members, and military vets were paying out of their own pockets, the DOD couldn't have possibly spent that amount. Granted, it's not like I saw 100,000 people over the years. I know enough to feel comfortably saying therapy is not required. Hormones are cheap, and surgery, well, that's a one-time event. Trans care is far more affordable and far easier to manage than treating active duty veterans and or their family members who have chronic illnesses. Chronic illnesses is something that they don't ask for themselves. Oh my God, these people just annoy me to no end. I'm not a doctor lover. I've been through a lot of them, and they annoy me. This annoys me. Okay. Even if that number is true, we all know it's not. It is still such a tiny, tiny, tiny part of their budget. I guess my other argument is, did they assess the numbers for treating for PTSD, hypertension, diabetes, mental health in general? Well, they're treating all the mental health people by transing them. Their skewed numbers boil down to not wanting to pay for and justifying medically neglecting those that need served protecting our freedom. Their skewed numbers boils down to not wanting to pay for and justifying medically neglecting those who serve protecting our freedom. I don't think it's medically neglecting. Thinking you're born of the wrong sex is nothing to do with your private parts. It's up there. Okay, and then we have a little rebuttal from someone. Surgery is definitely not a one-time event. For those members seeking genital reconstruction, it can be in 2 to 4 stages. For phalloplasty, which most of my 150 plus active duty female to male patients wanted, the cost can be upwards of $200,000, not including travel, lodging, per diem, and aftercare, medical supplies, and medications. Sadly, many service members are still utilizing their own funds for therapy because of confidentiality issues, and some HRT when they are about to get out of microdosing for alleviation of symptoms. I work right outside Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, Marine Base. It can be tough when they are not comfortable coming out yet, and yet they need help. They cannot disclose that they are military if they wish to use a civilian clinic for HRT out of pocket. I am still thankful for the process. I am still thankful for the progress. When I was a Marine, it was during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I agree with you. I suspect that many service members are self-funding their care rather than entertaining the bureaucratic system and the potential stigma from seeking out care. The prior presidential administration's effort to curtail coverage weren't just focused on avoiding payment for care altogether, it was a scare tactics to reduce the number of trans service members and to invoke fear in those currently serving in the armed forces by creating a hostile work environment via stigma by association. Well, what about the straight people? Maybe they feel stigmatized and maybe they feel a little bit hostile type stuff. It says, for anyone working with transgender veteran, please refer them to their closest VA LGBTQ Veterans Care Coordinator. And then somebody down here goes on to say, I'm surprised that the military has covered any gender confirming surgery so far. Yada, yada, yada. The most important part I wanted to talk about was the brainwashing and how much they're spending to brainwash our military. That's supposed to protect our country. Why? Why do they have to go? Look at that. 11.5 million was spent on psychotherapy. And then down further on, they're saying they don't even need psychotherapy. Just give them the hormones. They're cheap. It's like the gas chamber, over in Germany. First, they started offing people in the back of trucks, and that was getting too messy, and they couldn't figure out how to get rid of them. Well, they thought, Zyklon B, made by the Bayer Corporation, would just be so much simpler. And all the people would just think they're going to go take a shower, and then it would all be all over for them. Well, I feel that way about the hormones. They're in line, saying, here, come over here. I have something to make you feel better. And they're going to come in, and then they're going to sprinkle hormones on them. And it's really no different than the gas chamber. Because in the long run, it's just not. It's just not.